What in the world makes us so embarrassed about the gospel? For I determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Let's open the Word of God to the 15th chapter of Mark's Gospel. You have to know that Pilate was fully aware of Jesus. He had been fully aware of Jesus who knows how long. Who knows how many weeks or months or years he had known about Jesus. But certainly he was very well acquainted with Jesus that week. His responsibility was security in the city of Jerusalem, and when Jesus entered the city, there would have been a massive reaction by the Roman power to make sure they secured the security of that city, because people were rising up and hailing Jesus as the Messiah, a new leader, a new king, a new anointed one. His troops were in on that from the very beginning. And of course, the cohort were the ones that went into the Garden of Gethsemane to arrest Jesus. And as I said at the time when we looked at that, permission had to be granted for them to do that by Pilate himself. He was well aware of the issues concerning Jesus, and he is also well aware that this is a blatant miscarriage of justice. He knows that. He knows that. So Pilate said to them in verse 31, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law. Kill him yourself." He gives them permission to execute Jesus. He gives them permission to execute Jesus. And the Jews said to him, "We're not permitted to put anyone to death." They're going to be so noble that they would never think of overstepping the parameters of Roman law. We're not going to do that. We really are not allowed to do that. All of a sudden, they're becoming so legal, so righteous. They don't want the responsibility of executing Jesus. They don't want to deal with the implications and repercussions. They've got to give Pilate some reason for executing Jesus. And Luke 23:2 comes in at this point. They make three accusations. This is what they said. He is perverting our nation. He is forbidding to pay taxes. And he's claiming to be king. All false, all lies. He did not pervert the nation. They did. He did not forbid to pay taxes. He told people to pay their taxes, and he paid his own. And while he claimed to be a king, his kingdom was never of this world. They lied. But that was nothing new for them. You'll notice verse 31 ends, "We're not permitted to put anyone to death." Verse 32 says, "To fulfill the word of Jesus which he spoke, signifying by what kind of death he was about to die." And what was the word of Jesus which he spoke that signified what kind of death he would die? John 12:32 and 33, "If I be lifted up," which was a prophecy of the elevated posture of a victim of crucifixion. Now we go back to the 15th chapter of Mark. This is what happened between verses 1 and 2. Pilate then questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He ignored the first one, that he had perverted the nation. He ignored the second one, that he was telling the people not to pay their taxes. And he went right to the third one, because this one fascinated him the most, apparently. "Are you the king of the Jews?" And of course, there's scorn in that, because there's nothing about Jesus that makes him look royal or regal. Remember his condition at this time. He has still a garment on that has been profusely stained by sweat and blood. He has a face that is battered and bruised from punches and slaps, spit all over his face. He has not been washed. Are you the king of the Jews? There's irony and perhaps sarcasm in that. And he answered him, it is as you say. It is as you say. That is a legitimate question, and our Lord gives a legitimate answer. Pick up on John's version of this. Pilate entered into the praetorium, summoned Jesus in, got him inside, said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? Pilate answered, I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Therefore Pilate said to him, so you are a king? Jesus answered, you say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. Pilate said to him, what is truth? Wow. An agnostic, a cynic. And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, I find no guilt in this man. Well, let's go back again to Mark's gospel. Are you the king of the Jews? It is as you say. When Pilate says, I find no guilt in this man, the chief priests, verse 3, began to accuse him harshly. Harshly. In fact, according to Luke 23:5, they were saying things like, he stirs up the whole nation. He stirs up the people all through Judea and even as far away as the Galilee. But we also read Matthew 27:12-14 that while he was being accused at this point, he never said a word to the Jews. And he never said a word to Pilate defending himself. He answered Pilate's legitimate question and gave him a correct and extensive answer about the nature of his kingdom, the fact that he was a king. But when the crowd began to scream and accuse him, he never answered at all. Verse 4, Pilate questioned him again, saying, do you not answer? See how many charges they bring against you? They were just throwing charges at him. These are the Sanhedrin members. These are the judges of Israel. This is the Supreme Court. And there's a rare silence in court. Jesus gives no defense against these lies, against this illegal barrage. Verse 5, Jesus made no further answer. So Pilate was amazed, from the verb thaumazo, to marvel, to be in wonder. Here was somebody being accused of all kinds of things that he didn't do, that weren't true, and he makes no defense. Makes no defense. What's Pilate going to do? Pilate's in a tough spot. Between verse 5 and 6, something happens. What happens? He sends Jesus to Herod. For the record of this, go to Luke 23. I've tried to put the chronology together for you, and this is an accurate reflection of that chronology. If you go back to Luke 23, you will see the same scene. The people kept on insisting. The people are saying he stirs up the people. He teaches all over Judea, starting from Galilee, even as far as this place. Verse 7 then says, when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, wow, he's a Galilean. They said as far as Galilee. Now, maybe that's a way out. So now we come to the second phase of the trial. He decides that if he's from Galilee, that's Herod's jurisdiction. So he sent him to Herod, who himself also was in Jerusalem at that time. Now, let me introduce you to Herod just very briefly. This Herod. There was a Herod called Herod the Great. Those kinds of names are usually self-granted. Herod called himself Herod the Great. He was not a Jew, he was an Idumean. He ruled Israel. He was an amazing builder. He built the temple and a whole lot of other things. But Herod the Great died in 4 BC, and he divided the kingdom among his 4 sons, the kingdom of Israel among 4 sons. The area of Galilee and Perea, east of the Sea of Galilee, went to his son named Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas. And he ruled for a long time, 4 BC to 39 AD, ruled 40 plus years. Now he ruled, like all the Herods ruled, all the 4 sons, as a vassal of Rome. He had to be pleasing to Rome or they would obliterate him. He was educated in Rome. He went to Rome, he was educated in Rome, he was empowered by Rome, and he served at the pleasure of Rome. So he was just a vassal, a petty king who served the purposes of Rome. Like his father, he was a builder. Like his brothers, he was a builder. In fact, collectively they built at least 12 cities, including the city of Sepphoris, which was then the largest city in Galilee, completed in 8 to 10 AD. Doesn't appear in the New Testament because it was a city where Jews didn't go and didn't live. Later, he built the city of Tiberias. And Tiberias was even a worse place for Jews to contemplate living because it was built over a cemetery, and they thought it was desecration of the cemetery. It was built on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee in honor of Tiberius Caesar, who replaced Augustus in 14 AD. And Herod Antipas had built that city. So he was a great builder. It was an unclean city. Jews wouldn't go there. In fact, they refused to go there. And so in order to get them to go there, they gave them free land, free houses, and tax exemptions if they would just go live there. It became Herod Antipas' capital city and home. It was colonized, but it was colonized by foreigners and misfits and migrants and destitute people and freed slaves and all kinds of riffraff. There's no indication in the 4 Gospels Jesus ever went to Tiberias. Now, you know the story of Herod Antipas. You know the ugly story. He married the daughter of Aretas, the king of Nabatea. It was an alliance marriage. And then he decided to divorce her and steal the wife of his half-brother. And so there was an incestuous, adulterous relationship there. John the Baptist confronted that relationship, and John the Baptist lost his head over that. It was served on a platter. This was not a nice man, Herod Antipas. He was a very wicked man. He was an incestuous man. He was a murderous man. He was an immoral man. And we've said a lot about him in our study of Scripture. He engaged in adultery and divorce and even in execution of the prophet of God. Now, did Herod Antipas have any personal knowledge of Jesus? Answer, yes, he did. He heard about Jesus, according to Mark 6:14 to 16, and he feared that this Jesus was John the Baptist back from the dead. Remember that? Because he had murdered John the Baptist, he had all kinds of guilt. And when he heard about this miracle-working preacher named Jesus, he was afraid that this was John the Baptist back from the dead, and he wanted to see Jesus, but never did. Never did. There was a second connection between Herod Antipas and Jesus. Jesus' final trip to Jerusalem, some Pharisees came to Jesus and they warned him to flee the region because Herod Antipas wanted to kill him. That's in Luke 13:31 to 33. Jesus said to those Pharisees, sorry, God has other plans. Herod Antipas is not going to kill me. And here's the third time that they interact. The first two, they never saw each other. This time they do. Jesus is sent by Pilate finally to Herod Antipas, who wanted to see him, and apparently on another occasion wanted to kill him, and now has his opportunity. Verse 8, Herod was very glad when he saw Jesus, for he had wanted to see him for a long time, because he'd been hearing about him and hoping to see some signs performed by him. Want to see miracles. He questioned him at some length, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and the scribes were standing there accusing him vehemently. They followed Jesus to Herod. And they're there with the same screaming, screeching accusations. And Herod, with his soldiers, after treating him with contempt and mocking him, dressed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him back to Pilate. Now Herod and Pilate became friends with one another that very day, for they had been before enemies with each other. When Herod finally meets Jesus, he's not impressed. He thinks it's a joke. He looks at this beleaguered man, and he concludes that this is no threat to anybody. By the way, he's in Jerusalem because it is the Passover. He's there. He's in the Hasmonean Palace, which is right in that similar vicinity. And he questions Jesus, verse 9 says, at some length. He fires a lot of questions. This is his time, he thinks, to judge Jesus. And Jesus doesn't answer any question. Not any question. The only time he answered questions was when they were legitimate questions, when the Sanhedrin asked him a legitimate question, and he answered, yes, I am the Messiah, yes, I am the Son of God. And when Pilate asked him a legitimate question about his identity, and he said, yes, I am a king, but not in the way that you think. He says nothing to defend himself, and the chief priests and the scribes keep firing the accusations. They put a gorgeous robe on him. The word is lampros. It means brilliant, shining, bright. Very possibly a white robe, because Jewish monarchs were prone to wear white robes. Agrippa is said to have had a white robe with silver woven through it, some kind of a dazzling robe on him. And this is part of the comedy that's now beginning to crank up. This is a joke. That this man is a king, that this man is a threat, is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Herod wants nothing to do with him. He just sent him back, verse 11, to Pilate. And then the strange comment in verse 12 that they had been enemies and they became friends. We know why they were enemies. Philo, the historian, records that Pilate put shields in Herod Antipas' palace, Roman shields with names of people that the Romans wanted to honor, that Pilate wanted to honor. He puts these shields in the house of Herod Antipas. The Jews believe these are idols. The Jews are upset. They send a message to Tiberius Caesar that Pilate is setting up idols in the city of Jerusalem. Tiberius Caesar thinks it's ridiculous to provoke these people. He tells Pilate to take them down and to haul them off to Caesarea, the Roman city on the coast, and put them in a pagan temple. Pilate does that, but he's not real happy about having done that. The fact that Pilate did that and usurped that authority over Herod Antipas made them enemies. Herod Antipas wouldn't have put those idols in his palace. Pilate did it, and they were hostile. And from that time on, until they agreed on what a joke Jesus was. Why does Pilate send Jesus to Herod? I think from Pilate's point, to confirm Jesus' innocence. That's what I think. I think he wanted Herod to say, I agree with you, this man hadn't done anything. And de facto, that's essentially what Herod did when he sent him back, without any kind of sentence, without any kind of adjudication. From God's viewpoint, this is just another testimony in the mouth, if you will, de facto, of a second witness, Deuteronomy 19:15, of the innocence of Jesus. It was only the Jews who want the Son of God murdered. Only the Jews. So Jesus is now sent back to Pilate. So let's go back to Mark 15 and we'll wrap it up. Back he goes to Pilate. Now, as we come back to Pilate at verse 6, I want to stop here and talk a little bit about Pilate. Okay, let me just give you a sort of a sketch of this man. We know he actually lived. He is a historical figure. Philo the historian, Tacitus the historian, and Josephus all write about him. He was the governor of Israel for a long period of time, relatively long period of time, from 26 to 36 AD, for at least 10 years. We know that he lived from archaeological finds. Near Caesarea, a stone has been found. That stone, the archaeologists dug up, is inscribed to Tiberius Caesar. And it makes reference to a man named Pilate as the prefect of Judea. So we have the testimony of historians and the testimony of archaeology. He is a prefect or a governor or a procurator. Any of those words will do. And what his responsibility was is multiple. 1, he commanded the Roman military. 2, he collected taxes. And 3, he judged matters related to Rome. So he was a combination military leader, administrative leader, and judge. In fact, it was the Roman governor who approved the high priests in Israel. Now, Pilate was hated by the Jews. He was hated by them because of things like putting up idols, from their perspective, in their buildings. But what is interesting about Pilate here to me is that he repeatedly declares that Jesus is not guilty. I find no fault in him 3 times. 3 times he pronounces him not guilty. And the man didn't get to the position he had by not having a sense of justice. He did have a sense of justice. He wanted to stand on justice. He wanted to maintain his legal ground. He wanted to do what was fit for a man of that dignified position. He wanted to do what would prove to the people who were above him that he was an honorable man. He wanted to treat Jesus in a just fashion. Justice is no threat to him. Jesus is certainly no threat to him or to Rome. But I'll tell you who is a threat to him. The Jews are. They make his knees knock. They make him shake. Here's why. On his first visit to Jerusalem, he came into town wanting to make a big show, and he came with this massive entourage of soldiers, and they were carrying banners and standards, and on the banners and standards were the busts of Caesar with an eagle. Caesar was considered a deity, and the Jews saw this as an idol. By the way, all previous governors from the historical records, all previous governors avoided such offenses, but Pilate was this brash, bold, proud man, adamant in refusing to remove the displays. He returned from Jerusalem with his banners back to Caesarea, and the people followed him. And what happened was, when they got to Caesarea, the record says they harassed him for 5 days to remove the idols. Finally, in frustration, he told the people to meet in the amphitheater in Caesarea. And they came, and he surrounded the people who had followed him with his soldiers, and he informed them that if they didn't stop the harassment on the spot, they would all be massacred in that amphitheater by the Roman soldiers. The Jews pulled their collars down and bared their necks and said, "Go ahead and massacre us." They called his bluff. And he removed all the images. and they had won.